It's been 23 years since I enjoyed SmackDown when it first released on the PlayStation way back in the day, and it's fair to say that the Switch hasn't had a great history of wrestling titles, with the most recent one being a literal meme. AEW Fight Forever is once again published by THQ, with this one being based on All Elite Wrestling, which I believe was founded back in 2019, so is relatively new within the wrestling world, with quite a few familiar faces like Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and even Jeff Hardy, who is looking a little bit older than I remember. We'll look at gameplay and controls, the roster, the lineup, the career mode, and everything in between. And certainly having the same developer as the SmackDown series, I am keen to see how far things have come, or not. Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp. Now, let's find out. Narratively, you are treated to some insights into the origins of AEW, but as far as story goes, it comes down to a career mode, with small story segments interspersed. And by story, I use that in a slightly loose sense of the word. You might be out for a meal and someone interrupts, walking into the restaurant all masked up to give you a bit of jip. Or perhaps you're looking for your bags at the airport and a rival decides it's the perfect time to insult you by suggesting that you might have lost your trunk. Oh yes, the insults are real here. And my goodness, does it remind me of that early SmackDown game. Now, gameplay is split into several different areas. You've got a number of game modes from the main menu, such as single, 2-on-2, 3-way, 4-way matches, and some slightly more elaborate ones, like the Casino Battle Royale with continuous players coming in and you struggling to survive, or another seeing the ring surrounded by electric barbed wire, and a countdown from 100 when it's eventually going to explode and do more damage to the person closest. Then of course you've got ladder matches, and there are various weapons, and there are 3 different mini-games, one seeing you collecting tokens falling from the sky, while bombs sporadically appear, and a couple of others. I think one of Fight Forever's weaknesses is ironically the lack of different ways that you can actually fight. Rival series have had significantly more game modes than this, but the one that matters I think is here, at least to me as a player. And that's the Road to Elite. Now the first thing you'll do here is create your own wrestler or choose one of the 47 rostered. And that creation process is okay. You can choose your height, weight, the overall look, tweak the facial features, and although it's a little bit clunky, there are some more granular elements, like creating custom cutscenes, tweaking the individual melee moves that you do, ranging from light and heavy attacks, as well as the grapple moves you can do in a normal or strong state. Every aspect of your movement system can also be tweaked and changed. If you don't like the controls, you can fiddle with that to your heart's content and remap every button. Road to Elite will see you enter a number of different matches. I am playing here as Glen the Hotspur, based loosely on Glen and his hairy back. No, I'm only joking, mate. Or am I? And it will see you try and become a rising star. Now the matches themselves, they feel quite familiar. As I mentioned, you have those light attacks, or you can hold the button down to do a more powerful punch or kick, but you can remap those and completely change out the movesets if you're using a custom character. Fight Forever uses a momentum system. This can be seen by the bar at the bottom of the screen. Once it maxes out, you'll be able to perform special as well as finishing moves. There are certain circumstances under which these can be carried out, and all of this is explained to the player when they're choosing. If it's just a standard grapple, then you'll press something like up on the D-pad or up on the right analog stick, and it will perform that special or finishing move. But there are others where they'll need to be running, on the ground, or slumped in the corner. One of its most interesting mechanics are the ability to counter certain moves. Using the L and R bumpers, and hopefully a little bit of timing, you'll be able to either counter a grapple or a melee attack, and obviously pressing the right button at the right time will do that. This can mean, as you get an eye for it, you can begin to counter and improve your overall momentum. Doing this at the right time can be the turning point in a match, but I'm not sure how I feel about the momentum system and its implementation. You can take other types of damage, such as head damage, body damage, depending on the move that's been done to you, but the shifts in momentum can be so drastic. You can go from complete domination 1 minute to getting your ass handed to you, and yeah, I guess that is kind of similar to a wrestling match, and I have been playing on hard modes, worth noting, because I think the easier and medium modes, understandably, are a lot more forgiving, but I did find those just a bit too easy. Winning the match alone isn't where the strategy ends though. You'll also be judged on your performance, so the amount of moves that you performed, the time that it took you to do it, and there's an element that showboating and style will also add to your overall score and the amount of cash that you earn. This cash is important and is known as career money. It can be used to improve individual statistics as well as both active and passive skills. Now, those stats, for example, may mean that you can set several different finishing moves to a character or improve their overall energy. The scoring of the round is interesting because if you rush through a fight, you don't get a very good overall score, you don't make as much money, but you do avoid potential injury. Now, injury can occur in a number of different ways. If you're fighting your heart out in one of those casino battle royale matches, you'll invariably eventually pull something. And if you don't get those injuries treated at the hospital, that will massively affect your performance in the next fight. Your current status and energy can be seen at the top of the screen, and it can also be boosted by eating at a local restaurant. They're quite cool ideas, but they're also quite superficial. Still, I did enjoy the RPG-like Road to Elite more than any other mode in the game. Now, if you don't want to play single player and you don't enjoy these career modes, then you have the option for online matchmaking. It remains to be seen how this is going to work because pre-release is something that we weren't able to test, but it is in there and you will be able to use your custom wrestlers, and I'm thinking how exactly that's going to work because you can massively improve the statistics of those. So essentially you could take an absolute beast online, but I'm sure there is some form of balancing. Controlling your wrestlers is a little clunky. This is generally down to some interesting control choices, but as mentioned, you can remap those. Things like switching between the other players you want to face. You do that by clicking the left stick in. It just feels a bit hit and miss, and it's not visually very clear who exactly you're targeting. Then the AI has a few issues. This will always be seen in something like a a three-way match, where if there's someone on the ground in the middle, the AI stands no chance and will simply be roundhouse kicking into the air. Now, it sounds like I don't enjoy it, but as far as wrestling games go, this is definitely one of the better ones I've played in a long time, and it's difficult to explain why, but it just feels a little half-baked. Perhaps it's down to a lack of modes or the 90s style storytelling, but I do enjoy that career mode. For me, gameplay scores 14 out of 20 and a control score 15 out of 20. AEW Fight Forever is running on the Unreal 4 engine and it runs okay. You're looking at 30 FPS most of the time, but the visual quality isn't particularly impressive, and that's on any platform. It has that classic slight blur to it, perhaps dynamic resolution scaling's at play, but I don't think the base models are actually that impressive. Now again, this isn't something I particularly care about. For me, it's all about performance. Load times are not entirely inconsequential, but the animations just don't hold up. Some of them look great, specific moves, it's almost like they trigger into a motion captured animation, but then they're walking around like they've got something stuck up somewhere. And those cutscene animations as well. It's a certain style, and it feels almost intentional. Acoustically, I do not like the music. That's very much a personal preference, and there is a jukebox so you can tweak the soundtrack or you can turn the background music off entirely. You're looking at a mixture of heavy rock and some vocal rap tunes. There just seems to be some audio balancing issues. Commentators will be very quiet, and the music's drowning everything else out when they're announcing. Sound effects also are a bit muddy and blend into the background when they should potentially be front and center. Even after tweaking levels, which you can thankfully do individually, it never sounded quite right, which is sad as they have some very famous voices, including the one and only William Regal, who helps out with a lot of the tutorials. Visuals and performance score 13 out of 20. Sound and audio also scores 13 out of 20. AEW Fight Forever will cost you £49.99 or your regional equivalent, has offline 1-4 player and online 1-4 player as well. The whole thing fits into 11.7 gigs and that's far too expensive. In my opinion, £35 would have been bang on the money, especially considering the slight lack of game modes. If you're after a SmackDown-like experience on Switch, then it's one to consider, but I'd be looking for a hefty discount. Yes, of course, there's an Elite Edition as well, which costs like almost double the price and includes some stuff that definitely gives it that value. But we're not going to talk about that. As it stands, the base version, for value, I give it 12 out of 20. AEW Fight Forever is going to please wrestling fans if they're not too fussed about the lack of variety or the very steep price. The career mode alone certainly kept me entertained, but in many ways it did feel like it was stuck in the past. It gets a SwitchUp score of 67%. Thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Let me know what you thought of this one down in the comments. Are you a wrestling fan? Are you going to pick this one up? Do you think I was too harsh? And as always, just a big thanks to all of you, our Patreons and members, and if you want to save a bit of money, you can use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg for the month of June, where you'll get 5% off instantly and 5% back in coins. All that's left to say, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!